if a robot hallucinates, it can do a lot of damage. It can be fatal in the worst case scenario as well. There is a massive opportunity out there,
Correct.
So the reality is this, like wherever there is a hype, there is some underlying current that is causing that hype.
Okay.
Challenges is this, that like how can you control the robot from the edge and have enough of the capabilities of the model deployed on the edge that the robot can operate independently and intelligently.
Everyone knows what AI could do in the present times. It can help you create code, generate videos, and also images. But my guest here today is using AI to talk to industrial robots. He's the founder of T-robotics, which is a Silicon Valley AI startup. They got their first seed funding of around $5 million a year ago, and they are on track to close a massive Series A probably this year. And they are solving one of the hardest problems in the hardware space. Asad, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be talking to you, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation with you.
All right, very nice. So, I'll just start from understanding what is your startup about. I was at your website. I looked at the platform, GPT, and it offers a massive promise. You don't have to program the robots. Instead, you can talk to them and they're going to make things happen. It's a massive, I would say, value proposition. But for non-technical CEOs and founders in the audience, how does that really work? When I say, for example, pick up that box, what really happens inside the robot's brain?
Right, like the simplest way to understand is this, that like around 1960s, this whole idea of capturing data and from that data being able to reproduce patterns, that like started taking roots. That eventually morphed into what we call as neural networks, then deep neural networks, and fundamentally AI based on such learned inputs has been limited to language generation, analytical reasoning. Kind of like a good example of that is what you see in ChatGPT, or you see it in Google Gemini. And in the robotics community, we knew that this idea of being able to capture data from robots and from humans, and essentially creating a learning paradigm for the robots can be very useful, because if you typically look at like the productivity ecosystem that we have today, it kind of like culminates at a digital screen, that like you simply have like, all right, you have some kind of information that's coming out, you have some dashboards, but anything beyond that, manipulating the physical world, there is a massive opportunity out there,
Correct.
So this is what like my co-founder and my rest of my team, we have been researching on it for a very long time. Around 14 years we spent on that. And it's a very tough task to do, because unlike traditional AI, you have the physical world and the physics of the real world that is the recipient. So fundamentally, it is a much harder problem than solving intelligence for analytical reasoning or language outputs. However, the opportunity is so huge that it is an endeavor worth pursuing.
Got it. That makes sense. And I totally understand that the traditional AI, which is limited to our screens, is something else. And then there's a big, wide physical world, and how you're going to navigate that world using AI is altogether a different challenge. I'd like to go deeper into this, technically speaking, but before we do that, I just want to quickly understand that this idea of yours, is it also sort of a product of the hype that we see around Gen AI, or is it more like a more advanced and complex engineering problems that you think that it's getting a little obscured by Gen AI, has nothing to do with that?
Yeah, typically there is smoke where there is fire. So every time you see a hype, there is always something underneath, that is causing that hype cycle. People typically look at like the boom and bust cycles of technology as if something that was nothing was hyped up and that bubble burst. Like a great example of that would be the dot-com crash. Like
Yes.
everybody looks at it as if like, oh, uh, people like started pumping money into the internet and then like, nothing came out of it. The reality is this, that uh, our world, the way it has been defined for the last 2 decades, the fundamental companies that formed that world came in exactly that period of 1995 to 2000. Amazon, Google, like, you name it. And so the reality is this, like wherever there is a hype, there is some underlying current that is causing that hype.
Okay.
And typically the companies that survive eventually go on to change the world. So to answer now, come back to your question about whether this is related to a Gen AI hype or not. So fundamentally, Gen AI is very different from what the brand of AI we need in robotics, and we can go into the details of it a little later. But this has been a quest of ours for a very long time. As long as I can remember, after my PhD, during my research, we have been looking into how robots can come to a point where they can operate intelligently. The ramifications of this are huge in manufacturing, in services, even in our homes. And I think the hype that you're seeing around robotics and AI, there's a very legitimate reason for it, because the fundamental technologies that are needed to create products that fundamentally change us and our relation to robots are already there.
So what you're saying is that essentially, if I've understood that correctly, that even if ChatGPT had not come out back in 2022 and there has been no hype around AI or LLMs, your startup or your product idea would still be there regardless of whether ChatGPT would have come out or not, correct?
Partially correct. It did help, because one very big thing that was a question mark in the robotic cycle was this, that the amount of data that we need for the robots to be able to do the kind of intelligent tasks that we human do. There was always a question mark that if the world is ready to host this kind of data, to have this kind of infrastructure, this kind of compute, to be able to carry out such tasks. And I think like ChatGPT, one of the things that like it really told us was this, that like if the price is big enough, then the world is willing to pay the price, to get to this kind of like benefits. So it did help. It also like reinvigorated the interest in AI and robotics as well, and that helps to get talent, to attract a lot of talent to come and work in this. So I would say that it's partially correct. It did help, but even if it did not exist, I think like robotics, the way things were going, would have come towards this point, regardless of whether this had happened or not.
Okay, so I'm not exactly trying to make any comparisons between AI and robotics and we see in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, but I help organizations build AI-based systems at enterprise level, and what we have access to is infinite computing power provided by cloud. But I guess you don't, because you have to run the inference on the robots. So is that a constraint, or do you rewrite your AI models so that they can be fit onto that smaller chip?
Yeah. So fundamentally, you can't run a robot directly from the cloud. No company is going to allow that, like, because some data center in Philadelphia went down, that's why like my production is stopped in Arizona or California. Also the safety constraints around so basically edge computing is very important for,
yes, that's what I thought,
for robots. However, the reality is this, that like the amount of data that we collect when the robots are doing something, let's say that they are doing machine tending, so the amount of data that we can collect while the robots are in production, you can't like host it on the edge device. So it's a very one of the biggest challenges is this, that like how can you control the robot from the edge and have enough of the capabilities of the model deployed on the edge that the robot can operate
Okay.
independently and intelligently. But those learnings that the robot had in time can do a handshake with the master model on the cloud and can exchange this information. So it's kind of a distributed architecture that works with control on edge and
Okay.
hosting on the cloud.
Okay, so what I've understood, and I have a non-technical background, that whatever task that a robot has to perform, information required in order to perform that task is going to be collected from the master cloud, but other information is not going to be hosted elsewhere. It's not going to be on edge. Just a limited information. It will be erased, and then this next set of instructions going to come from cloud, from the master cloud. Is this how it's going to work?
No, not exactly like that. Because you can look at it as this, that an instance of the model, we call it like, a specific purpose model. Let's say that the robot is doing a machine tending task.
Okay.
And typically industrial robots, you want the robot to do the production task really, really well. And you are not going to ask the robot to, let's say, do machine tending in the morning and cut potatoes in the evening. So you just really want focus on the robot being able to do machine tending in all its manifestation. So what we do is that on the edge, we have this model that is deployed, and this model is fully capable of dealing with machine tending in all its manifestation.
Okay.
However, as the production data starts gathering in that edge device or locally, as we say, every 10-15 days, there is a handshake between the edge device and the cloud so that this data exchange can take place. So essentially, like, data from the edge device goes to the cloud, and then it becomes part of the training of the model. And then this renewed model with this renewed data is pushed back with regular cadence to the edge devices.
Okay. So while answering this question, you talked about not having a robot controlled by a cloud service provider, because one of the consideration is this safety as well.
Yeah.
And I speak with a lot of my clients. Some of them think that AI is magic and they want to embrace that really, really fast. But later down the line in the conversations, there is one concern that pop up, which is about AI hallucinations. The space in which I build agentic AI for our clients, although hallucinations is a concern, but if a chatbot is going to hallucinate, probably you're going to get a weird email. But in your case, stakes, I believe, are very high, because if a robot hallucinates, it's probably going to break $100,000 or more expensive machine, or even worse, someone can get hurt in this. So do you implement extra safety layers or guardrails to make sure that the bot does not hallucinate, or it's not applicable to you at all?
No, it is very much applicable to us.
Okay.
Because if a chatbot hallucinates, then you have some gibberish that you listen to, and then you can ask for it to correct it. So I think ChatGPT is so successful because nobody expects it to do the entire task on its own, and if it ends up with 100% of the task done, then everybody's really happy. But that 80% gets you started and saves you so much time that it has become one of the best products ever released.
Yes, that's human in the loop concept. You still need
that. This does not apply to robots. If a robot hallucinates, it can do a lot of damage. It can be fatal in the worst case scenario as well.
Okay.
So when I say that, we spent the last 14 years researching on this problem, one of the most important thing, or one of our most important IP is how do you take a system that starts from something which is inherently non-deterministic, probabilistic, Yeah.
Yes.
So your LLMs, or we don't use the LLMs. We use a concept called VLAs, which is called Visual Language Action Model. But it shares a lot of like similarities with the representations and algorithms that are used in formation of LLMs. And how do you make it into a deterministic system? So something that can reason, something that can explain its reasoning, and is able to carry out a task without hallucination, because physics is not going to allow a hallucination and be like, oh, okay, that was a minor problem, so something won't fall or something won't break. So if you want, we can like go into the details of it, but this has been our research of the last 14 years. Like, how can we take something which is inherently probabilistic but put guardrails, and not just guardrails but rational reasoning as a subsequent layer, which then allows the robot to operate deterministically and also safely. And also, the side effect of that is this, with speed and accuracy that you expect from the robot.
But your potential clients, do they ask you this question that, what if your robot starts thinking on their own, or that's not a concern?
So
is it a barrier?
When you go out of like the Silicon Valley hype cycle into the real world, where the customers are going to pay you for your product, they don't care about what technology there is. So they actually couldn't care less about whether there is a robot or not. What they care about is the metrics. Will their production numbers increase? Will they be able to get more out of their workforce? Will the workforce be able to do more meaningful work? And how would it overall affect their business, their revenue, their lead times? So how we work at T-robotics is this, that all the technologies that we build, there is a question around, does this make the life of our customers better or not? Right. And if the life of our customer is not getting better, we don't make features, just to make ourselves happy. So when we are talking to the customers, they are more concerned about the performance. Any concerns that they might have, and they do have a lot of concerns around basically not just the safety, but the fact that this software looks too good to be true,
Yeah.
So typically, they insist on seeing it
In action.
themselves, in action, in demos, even sometimes trial periods. But once they have experienced the joy and the productivity that this system brings, they can't really go back to the old way of doing things. And that is really the promise and beauty of AI.
I completely understand what you're saying. So the clients, they probably want to see the bottom line, that how their life's going to be improved from the business standpoint. Are you going to help them improve or increase the revenue or cut the costs, and ultimately how it's going to affect the bottom line, more or less. I've worked with so many organizations in the software world where doing a digital transformation is something they really believe in, because that's going to help them do things better. But at the same time, there are some legacy systems that they want to stick to. You are selling into industrial warehouses, probably who have dumb sort of robots or machines deployed over there for over 2 decades. Now, your modern software, how is it going to integrate with that ancient legacy robots that they have without breaking everything?
There's just no way around it. Yeah. If you want a company that creates real impact, especially in our space, it is just a fact of life that you would be encountering PLCs from the 1980s. PLCs, these programming logical controllers. You have no control over what kind of manufacturing execution systems are going to be encountered. Even the machines that our robots work alongside with, what kind of drivers, what kind of interfaces they do have, you just don't have any control over it. But that is where the opportunity is, because if you are willing to put in this hard work, that like, hey, in my ideal world, there will be a, an API and SDK for every single thing in the world. I mean, then, yeah, like I would love to live in such a world. The reality is such a world doesn't exist. And you can't spend all your time on creating just SDKs and interfaces for everything. So you have to use your best business logic to find out like, okay, who are the market leaders that I can partner with, and I can get preferential access to their equipment or their drivers. And more than that, we just have to ensure this, that we have to put in the hard work.
So what's the exact, how is that gonna pan out? Like, are you aiming to have the organization that you're trying to sell into, either through your partners or the OEMs, to push out their inventory of old robots and replace it with the latest ones that runs your software on top? Is this what you guys are aiming for? Which is a big, I would say, requires a lot of effort to convince somebody to do that.
No, when you're doing business with customers, there is only as much push that you can give to the customers to change it. Remember this, like when you create a company that is solving a real problem, the gauge that it is a real problem is this, that the customer is willing to not just pay, but be flexible around the solution that you're giving, because the problem is so big. If the customer is like, oh, I'm not going to do anything, and if your solution fits, then it fits, that means that the scale of the problem is low. So I believe that in this scenario, the role of our sales qualification becomes pretty huge. So today we support a number of machines, a number of interfaces, a number of industrial components, and this number of components is steadily increasing. We don't try to get business for which we have to write integrations and then essentially throw it out. We work with a set number of vendors, partners, robots, PLCs, and we qualify our customers for that before we sign up.
Okay, so in one line, in very layman terms, let me share my understanding with you.
Right.
And if I can understand it, then I think my audience can understand what you guys are doing. So essentially, there is a manufacturing facility. They have industrial robots which can do a number of tasks. However, in order to have that robot change from one task to the other task, they need a machinist and a programmer and probably some other stuff as well, which is time taking, which costs money and slows these guys down. What you guys bring into the table is that instead of going through all those programming stuff, you can just talk to the robot and it's going to do the task that you want them to do. Essentially, in a nutshell, is that a fair way to encapsulate what you guys are trying to do?
Very fair. So you can just, if I was to explain it, I would say that you can have a robot, could be from any generation of industrial robots.
Okay.
We pre-train a model that allows the robot to understand vision, understand language, understand haptics, understand the actions, and now has this intelligence that even if the owner of that robot doesn't know everything about the task, it can just query the robot to do that task, and the robot will have a simple conversation with it and will be able to program an application in a matter of seconds. So,
I get it. Now I get it. Let's start from the beginning.
Right.
This idea, what's the story behind your Spark? Is this something that was always was a hunch that evolved over slow burn, or was it more like an epiphany that you had one day and you said that this is what I'm going to do? How did you come up with this idea to begin with?
So both me and my co-founder, we started in robotics in early 2010, 2011. So we have been working on robots for a very long time. And when you work with the robots for the first time, there are two feelings that you get, one is this feeling of wow, this is amazing. Imagine a 2,500 kilogram handling a robot, doing repeatedly what you asked it to do. So there is like this immense satisfaction and power that you feel that we can do things that are impossible for us to do manually. On the other hand, the second feeling that you get is like, wow, this is so difficult and painful to program this thing.
Nice.
And being researchers, your job is to research on something that will make the robot more capable and your job more easier. So I would say that like it has been a lifelong quest to make robots more intelligent, and intelligence is on a lot of different layers. It is on the layer of how the robots physically operate, how the robots communicate with humans, how the robots handle any kind of errors. And rather than just one epiphany one day, it has been a slow burn, which started with, oh, can we do this? Then it transformed into like, oh, maybe we can do this, to a point like, oh, we must do this now because the time for this technology is here.
So when you secured your seed round,
Right.
okay, over time, you have been working on this, thinking about it, but when you secured your seed round, for the technical founders who are listening to this, what was the specific moment that you were able to convince the investors to bet on you guys? Did you already have some clients who shared interest in this, or was that a cool demo? What exactly was the point where the investor says, yeah, we're going to go forward with T-robotics?
Yeah, it's a combination of all the things that you mentioned. And I would also say, like, seed is so early in your journey that there is a lot of like serendipity and luck that is also, I mean, I wouldn't like say this, that it's just purely, performance, because somebody needs to be a believer in you as well. And I think like this is a very important factor, that you can like waste a lot of time trying to like fundraise from VCs who are not believers, and even if you end up raising money from such VCs, I think it will hurt you later on, because
Right.
knowing what I know now, to do impossible things, you need a team of zealots and believers who are really married to the mission. So in our case, the number one thing that we got very lucky with was this, that like both me and Lars, my co-founder, being in the robotic space for such a long time, we had access to basically some of the best talent that we wanted to
Right.
bring in our team.
Right.
And just like we were motivated, like this first founding members who joined us when we had like raised nothing, they were equally motivated for solving the robotics problem for the world. I mean, if you think about it, like if you are creating a company that can one day provide the world its labor, I mean, there is no
Nice.
bigger mission than this, right? And I've seen this, that driven engineers they gravitate towards the mission more than they gravitate towards money.
Money.
Finances or anything.
Right. Right.
The good thing is this, like, when you're a believer and you have such a big mission, eventually you get everything. You get money, prestige, intellectual fulfillment. Everything comes in time, but not immediately. So we were very lucky with that. So we started with a very strong team. Then the focus that we had was another important thing. Rather than trying to do everything and anything and just creating like wild demos, we were like, okay, we would be doing things that maybe do not have as much of a demo value, but we will end up with very strong financial and actual metrics around how many customers are we able to delight with our product. And that kind of become like this manic focus, that like do less things but do things that matter to the customers. And I think like when you find these two elements, a great team, a product that is bringing delight, funding and expansion, it comes naturally.
You guys also won the ABB's AI Startup Challenge back in 2024, which I believe is a huge validation from the industry giant. Can you first tell me a little bit about what that challenge was that you won,
Right.
you came on the top, and was that also helpful in kind of convincing the investors that they should invest in you guys?
Yeah, I think like that did play a role. If you look at the robotics landscape today, there are like 5 companies uh, that provide 90% of all the world's industrial robots, and ABB is one of the
Yeah.
best robotic companies that's out there, as we call it, the robot OEMs. They were early to realize that AI and robotics, they will be a very powerful combination. So rather than just going and partnering with the company that has the most hype or most funding raised, they did a very smart thing that they invited around 211 companies from the world over to
Okay.
compete with each other to figure out like who has the best possibilities or technologies or ideas that can integrate with ABB's robotic roadmap. So we participated in that, and at that point we were like what 4 months old as a company. So very very early
But
days.
it was before the seed round.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
before the seed round.
After pre-seed, but before seed.
Yeah, so we raised a little bit of pre-seed monies to keep our like lights on. It was after that, but before seed round. And yeah, so we participated in that challenge, and we ended up winning that challenge. Ended up partnering with ABB, who have been fantastic partners. We've learned a lot from them, and I think like we have a very good partnership, very strong partnership going on. So that definitely did help in raising our next round.
Without getting into details, but the challenge was like you have to come up and show whatever idea that you have, versus they gave you a problem that all of the teams were supposed to solve, and whoever solves it better, faster, is going to be the winner. Which one of the two was the structure of that challenge?
So ABB was very clear in their head about what is it that they want, because
I see.
AI is so broad that like you can define it in any way possible. So they wanted like one of their criterias was how you can program an entire application with natural language conversation. So natural language was one part of it. The other part, and I think like much more important than natural language conversation, was the decision making and planning component of the stack, and the last part was the reasoning part. So reasoning part all over the world in AI is still a process that is under development. So you can reason within certain bounds, but you cannot have, let's say, very very complex reasoning, especially like when physical actions are involved. Decision making and planning, that is where we shine really, because even if you look at
So you
like
make it and plan.
our
Okay.
if I look at the team's publication record and like what we have been researching on for the last 14 years. So long story short, we had like a pretty good product that was able to win across all 3 of these domains.
Nice.
And that ended us landing a partnership with ABB.
Sure. Thanks so much for that detail. So, Asad, I understand your take on companies trying to capture the future potential of technologies. I was looking at Elon Musk's latest bet. I think that is a $1 trillion bet, and he's asking for a package where one of his KPI is to ship 1 million humanoids, I guess Optimus, in the coming months or years. You are in the robotics space. What's your take on this? Is this really going to be aligned with what the industry is going to be needing, specifically the industrial side of the robots, as well as robots that can fold someone's laundry, or is just vanity?
This is a tough one to answer because you never know how the future will pan out. We have created a world that is a world for humans. Why is the table this height? Why is it like not down? It's because when humans sit down, typically this is the height. So I see the the pull towards humanoids. I see the opportunity that humanoids, if that problem is solved, the benefit it can bring to humanity. But the jury is out on like how big the impact would be. What are the practical constraints for the humanoids to fulfill their potential. When I was thinking about the company, I was thinking about fundamentally like what are the technologies that will be needed, regardless of what robot the technology is working on. So, for intelligence to work, you need to reason, you need to understand your world, you need to act in real time. So, fundamentally, we worked on the core building blocks of how mechanical components can become intelligent physical
Right.
manipulators. And the good thing about this approach is this, that if humanoids someday materialize, our algorithms will be as applicable on humanoids as they are
Okay.
on robotic arms. But the reality is this, that like there is no person who knows robotics that will ever say that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there would not be robotic arms that are doing the grunt work in
Uh-huh.
our manufacturing, in our services. I mean, just today, with all the limitations of robots, we still have like over 5 million robots that are manufacturing everything from, I don't know, these mics to these laptops. So there's a huge opportunity for robots in the future. I think people like Elon Musk and a few others, they are trying, pushing very hard on humanoids, and I wish them all the best. Regarding ourselves, we will focus on the fundamental foundational models for robots, and our path is going from robotic arms, graduating towards mobile robots,
And
graduating
humanoids.
towards
Yeah.
humanoids if they ever become a thing.
When I listen to all this good things or these advanced things that's going to happen in future, uh, I am somehow unsure that whether this is a threat that they are going to replace the humans in the factories or the taxi drivers. But at the same time, I come across reports which says that in a for example in the manufacturing sector, I was looking at a report by Deloitte which says that around 2 million jobs within US will be unfilled by 2030. And you see similar reports about jobs being unfilled in other sectors all around the world as well, which makes me think that maybe the advancements in AI and robotics, specifically what we are talking about today, is not a threat. Actually, it's a savior. But I'm still not sure which one of this is the right way to kind of look at these advancements. What's your take on that?
I feel like in the short term, uh, there will be some changes to how humans are used to working, and we can already see with the advances in AI that you know mediocre professionals can almost operate at the speed and efficiency of highly professional
Right.
people. So I think like there will be a transition period where we will like try to find our pace as humans alongside AI, and this will be the same with physical AI as well. I think the opportunity is much bigger than any fear that is around this technology. It will impact the world in a very heavy way, but I fundamentally see it as something that enhances our capability to do labor.
Uh-huh.
In the best case scenario, labor will become a choice for humans in the next 20 years.
Uh-huh.
It will free us from dirty and dangerous jobs, which is a very noble thing. And I think the overall impact of robotics and AI on the society will be positive. Having said that,
Right.
this is a technology where the potential of misuse is very, very high.
Yeah, nobody talks about that.
Right.
Everybody talks about how good it's going to be, but if it gets into the wrong hands, like we don't talk about the negative side or downside of all this technology
Yeah.
at all,
Because the
because
reality
then
is,
nobody's going to like invest in this. Maybe that's why.
I think like there are a lot of people who understand this, that the same technology, if used for violent ends,
Yeah.
can do violence with an efficiency that we as humanity never had a chance of inflicting that kind of horrors in the past. There is a very real possibility, and I personally feel from the way I see investments going in defense tech, that this technology is being, let's say, investigated for military usages, and
Yeah.
that can be a threat to humanity. However, even in that, I have a feeling that we already have a technology that has the potential to just kill us all. I'm talking about nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But until now, I don't know if this will
May
be a
God
trend in the
forbid. Yeah.
future. I feel that there will be guardrails, there will be safety systems that we will build around it that will ensure that no bad actors can get access to this technology. But this will be a challenge because, unlike nuclear, this is a technology that can be, yeah, had by many people.
I understand that. So you mentioned that there is an evolution in the technology, the advancement, and people are finding ways to adjust around that. But at the same time, I see that there's a lot of hype that we get from Silicon Valley, specifically for like what Gen AI and LLMs could do for the organizations. But on the ground, I see organizations that I consult or work with that, or they have worked with somebody else in the recent past because of this obsession over the past 2 years with AI. They buy a software, they build agentic AI, they run the pilot POC of that, and they all clap their hand because they love the demo. But for some reason, they are not able to deploy that in their production. It could be the ecosystem, which is not very welcoming to implement AI, or their data not available. I know that you are specifically working in the robotic space, but in your cohort, I'm pretty sure that there are so many AI startups that you interact with. What's your take? What is the reason that there is a big promise around AI, but on the ground we don't see enough evidence that people or the organizations have taken advantage of that AI around good business use cases that help them grow, get efficient, or any other business metric that can be improved? We don't see much of the evidence around that. So, what's your take on that?
So, in principle, I agree with your thought that the promise and hype around the AI, uh, it has also raised the expectation on the customer side as well.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's one of those like catch-22 problem where you don't like really know where to nail the blame, because companies are also guilty of overhyping the possibilities. And it's not just about startups or new companies, but I see uh, really huge companies making this mistake as well. Like the first thing that comes to my mind is the hype around virtual reality and augmented reality created by
back in
Meta. And they kind of like fell victim to their own advertisement, like, that companies will see,
They changed their name to Meta.
they changed the
Metaverse.
name to Meta. Their advertisements, like created like this heaven where everybody is like,
Yeah,
easily able
you
to
and I would
use.
have been in Metaverse having this podcast if that idea would have
Exactly, right?
followed through.
And what it did was this, that I still believe that technology was very promising, but the way they hyped it up to get people excited hurt them when the product was actually shipped, because it didn't match their expectation. Even though like they kind of recovered from it, and I think like these Meta glasses that you're seeing right now, I think they have a space in our modern world, but they did fell victim to their own, let's say, advertisement. And I think that's also the case with AI as well. I would like argue that there are companies that have benefited quite a lot from AI. There have been many successful
Uh-huh.
deployments of AI. There's just simply no doubt about it that, I mean, in my own company, like, we rely heavily on our development workflow on AI for DevOps or coding, for code reviews, for QA testing. So there is definitely advantages. However, there are applications where companies hype up what the AI can do,
Yes.
then they deploy it, and of course, it's not the fault of the customer when something was sold to them where they had their expectations at cloud nine, and then you come up with something that doesn't fulfill this
So
expectation.
in
So
few sentences, like one, so there are like there have been in the past hypes around a lot of things which didn't pan out the way it is, but the underlying technology survived. Like there was, when we talk about, we were kids, maybe at that time when there was a dot-com bubble burst, and everybody says that that was a very bad time in the history. However, the internet survived, right?
Right.
And same can be said of about a lot of other things. So maybe there's a hype around AI, and a lot of people are going to lose their money who are invested in this, expecting a certain ROI they're probably not going to get. But based on what you just said, the impression that I got is that there may be hype, but ultimately people are going to find ways to use AI in their business use cases, and ultimately it's going to get its ground. It's going to find its foothold in the businesses. So it's not going to die down like crypto or big data or whatever that didn't survive in the past. It's going to stay here. It's only a matter of whether it's going to happen in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years.
We would not know a world from now on where AI is not a thing.
Okay.
The impact of AI will continue to grow. Use cases that today customers are not satisfied about,
Right.
someday they will be satisfied about it. So there is just simply no doubt about it, right? However, I think a good business practice, I'll talk about my company.
Yeah.
I can create a demo that will stun you with
Right.
robots, right? But I know this, that if that demo deployed at scale, the performance would be not as good, right? So rather than impressing you or impressing my investors or just general public, I just say let's ground the expectations around our product to the value that it can bring today.
Okay.
So that's how we advertise. We are not shy in telling them the possibilities that we can build on this baseline, and we are moving very, very fast towards incorporating that into our product. However, raising the expectations and delivering a bad product that does not fulfill this, some companies do this. We are not one of those, and I would not suggest to basically anybody, to do that. So, in a nutshell, the answer to your query is this: that there is certain aspects of this technology that can be deployed at scale that bring a lot of value.
Okay.
If your company happens to be one of those companies that has nailed down that value, the
Nice.
world is at your feet. You can do whatever you want. If you're one of those companies which is at a technology readiness level which is not to the point
Uh-huh.
where your customers will find delight, you will only hurt yourself by shipping a product that is not ready.
So I guess the takeaway from this is that anyone, if there is someone in the world who still thinks that okay, AI is a fad, it's gonna go away, and we're gonna go back to the older previous methods of doing work, they should wake up. And maybe it's a hype from the economic standpoint, and the bubble's probably gonna burst because of the circular economy and all of that. But the best time to start embracing AI was yesterday. Now it's already too late, so you should better get on that track and start. If you are a developer, you should know how can you use AI to generate intelligent code. If you are a business owner, you should know what processes of your business can be automated using AI. There is no way you're gonna say no to that and still be successful in the future that we see gonna pan out. Correct?
Yeah, I think like
Okay.
even if you are in a business where you have a very stable moat, this is one of those fundamental technologies that will erode your moat over time.
Yes.
I do not think that there is any legacy business, any SaaS business that is not at risk today from the possibilities that we have with AI. So, yeah, closing your eyes to it, that's not going to help. But also, you can't use that fear to ship a product that is not performing. That also won't work. So, typically, these things, they balance out at certain point. I mean, regardless of whether there is a hype or not, the reality is this: that there is an opportunity. It's one of those game-changing technologies that will impact us very deeply. And there will be winners and there will be losers, and you should try to be in the list of the winners.
Winners, yeah, that's what you should aim for. So based on the conversation, it's a very interesting conversation we have had so far? Not only based on that, but also based on your background. So, Asad, based on the conversation that we have had so far, I can tell that you have a very strong technical background, and not only the conversation, but also looking at your background, you have a PhD in robotics, and you have done a lot of research work in various organizations. And I see that a lot of technical founders they get too stuck, playing technical. They forget to be the CEO. So my question is, how did you force yourself to stop coding and start selling? And how was that shift? Was it over time, or is what it was just a switch that was flipped and you became a CEO?
When you're like geared towards a mission, uh, there has to be so basically you have to do whatever it takes to fulfill this mission, right? So when me and Lars, my co-founder, we got together and we said like, okay, we have to like, this is our mission, this is our company, somebody has to take the CEO role, and the CEO role
Right.
has, by its very nature, a big spread in responsibilities. You have to deal with legal, you have to deal with customers, you have to like bring the best people around. So there is a big learning curve. There's just simply no way around it. And the more you do it, the more you get better. I can't say like where on that learning curve I am, but gauged by the performance of the company so far, we have done fine. So my take on this is that your PhD, your research, it teaches you one thing, that is that you have to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I think the hard part for many technical founders is this: when they found out that the next stage of their learning is to not go deeper into their tech stack, but to
Yes, difficult.
go more wide in basically soft skills. Like
And
just to give you an
strategy.
idea, like yesterday I spent around 6 hours, uh, on hiring, right? So it was just like interviews after interviews. Um, and at the end of the day, it didn't give me the fulfillment that I typically
Yes.
would get if I had like spent 6 hours coding or 6 hours writing a paper or reading a research paper. So you just have to like live with like this new reality of
So,
yours.
do you enjoy being a CEO, or do you miss being a techie, or you're somewhere in between? And at a personal level, I know there's a lot of good things happening to your startup, but at a personal level, you're also going through, I, I would say, a transformation, not just a simple change here.
I think like there is a different mindset that you go into when you become a founder, and I feel that you're like,
It is, but is it common? The reason I ask is this because even in your case, I think at one point in your career, you were writing research papers on haptic feedback, and then you were creating pitches for the VCs. So from selling science projects to get some grants to selling a business idea, there's some massive shift,
right.
which we have seen in your case. But is it common in Silicon Valley? Do you find people like you who were, at heart, at core techies, but they were successfully able to transform themselves into business owners or CEOs?
A ton of them.
Okay, so
the thing is just that what I don't know is like how many failed in that transition. But of course, like the people I
a
met,
lot
like,
tried.
yeah, like the ones I met are those who obviously have succeeded. A good thing about like the San Francisco Bay Area is this, that like and I find it like in general very impressive about that part of the world is this, that if you're of the mindset that like I have a grand idea and I'm good at certain things, for all the things that you're not good at, you can really find world class talent to come in. And I think like extrapolating this thought, like you can do it anywhere. You just have to be honest to yourself, like, hey, I'm not good at something.
Okay.
Like
You can't
I
solve all the problems. You have to delegate. You find people
you find people, you
who can
empower
do
people,
certain tasks better than you.
right? And I think like in my opinion, and I feel like I'm underqualified to say it, but to be a good CEO, you need to have a good eye for
Talent.
talent,
Yeah.
and not just that, but creating a culture in your company where that talent don't feel shackled by anything. So I think that really helps in making sure that you
So
perform
you're
at your
building
best.
that culture, and I have come across in my career this word culture. And whenever I ask somebody, "What do you mean by the company culture?" everybody seems to have a different definition about it. I'm not sure if it's the environment, it's the free food, it's the people, it's all of them. Like what's culture? If you have to simplify, like you can say all those vague things about what is a culture, and then still it's open for interpretation. But in your opinion, are there any two or three things that you think are the important variables that makes up the culture?
It's very hard for me to give a succinct definition about what culture is.
And
I
that's what
can
the problem is.
probably give you some examples. Uh, it's very easy to figure out a toxic culture
Okay.
where younger people or people who are reporting to their managers, they don't feel empowered to tell that we are not moving fast enough, or we are not, let's say, innovating fast, or sometimes it's obvious, the writing is on the wall all around you that hey, we are going down the drain, and somehow the leadership keeps drinking the Kool-Aid that everything is fine.
Yes.
That's a trait of a toxic culture. Very strongly believe in the culture, and how I feel about it without having this very lucid definition about it is this: that we have a grand mission in front of us. We need to bring in the best people and give them an environment where they can do their best jobs.
Mm.
And sometimes to do their best job, they might feel that some push is necessary, around speed, around the ability to find faults in ourselves, to make better products, to um, and having this useful environment, a set of values around which you rally to go towards this grand idea, this grand vision. This is how you define a culture, So a good check for me is to just see that people who call this company home, how do they feel about
Okay.
our mission and their own
So
working
common
environment.
mission is very important.
Yeah, of course, my mission and
Awesome,
values.
awesome. That's really nice. One last question over here. I really appreciate your time so far. The conversation was very insightful. Uh, Last question I have in my mind is that there are lots of big players in the robotic space,
Mhm.
and you guys being a startup disrupting a lot in that space, which is amazing. Any other industry space where there are already incumbents who are major players, and a new company or small company wants to compete with them? Is there any strategy that you can, in general, not specific to any particular space or industry, but in general, is there any, I would say, a method that you could share that they can probably take some guidance from? Not necessarily a playbook, but something like a guiding post that can tell you this is where you need to go if you want to beat a Goliath, you being a David with your slingshot.
Yeah, so this David and Goliath example is very apt because often I've seen people ask me okay, what you're doing, there are parts of Google that are trying to do this as well, right?
Yes.
How are you going to compete with them? I say uh, we have our own advantages, and we have to play by that advantage. And what is that advantage for a startup? So the thing is this: in big corporations, if you have to move fast, if you have to take decisions fast, you have to rally a lot of people. There are a lot of moving pieces that need to come into like you know in sync with each other to make progress, right? And we have this ability to not only move incredibly fast, we have very little regulation in testing out new ideas. And even if we fail, we can pivot so fast that we can fail
Yes.
20 times in a month and we can still have a very successful month. And this is our only and our biggest advantage. If a startup loses this advantage, that they can try a lot of things very fast and is able to find out and iterate over all of those failures to find something that is sticking, then basically they will go out of business. But this speed advantage is so enormous that even big companies, just for example, take ABB for
They dream
example,
about it.
right? Why did they created such a huge challenge and went through all the pains of testing out 211 new companies for their AI stacks? And why didn't they just put a team inside
Yeah.
AVB to do that. Because the reality is this, that like
Yeah.
the speed of innovation, the speed of test and trial that we can bring, and the kind of risks that we can take. Like, for example, ABB, if they release a product and that doesn't stick, that is gonna hurt their brand value, right? While
Yeah,
as
that's a good idea.
T-robotics, like we can ship out 5 products and
Fail
have
and still get
zero
a pat on
sales
the
on
back. Yeah.
that, and it doesn't affect us because, right? I mean, we don't have like that brand legacy behind us to feel very bad about it. If the sixth one stuck and like sold 101, we'll be celebrating, you know.
That's a
And
very deep point.
right,
And there are advantages to being small and having no baggage.
no baggage, nothing
We
to
are
lose, you know.
no big reputation that you're going to be worried about. You can do
Right.
anything, and that's where the innovation happens. Asad, I am extremely thankful for your time and for the insights. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I hope our audience also found some of the insight that you provided very, very helpful. And it kind of gives us the passion and motivation to kind of make difference in the world like you have done. Thanks so much for joining us on this podcast, and I hope to talk to you soon again.